I can still feel the sting of his words, even years later. "You're nothing but a freeloader," my brother had shouted across the kitchen, his face red with anger, the room thick with tension. I was 28, living in the house I had grown up in, taking care of mom after dad passed, making sure she had her meals, medications, and someone to talk to every day. I had left my career in another city to be here, sacrificing comfort and stability because family mattered. But he didn't see that. He only saw what he wanted: a reason to belittle me, to make me feel small, to convince himself that my devotion to mom was laziness or manipulation. "You just sit around all day while I work," he continued, packing back and forth, the sound of his shoes on the hardwood floor echoing in my ears. "Mom doesn't need you babying her. You're taking advantage of her and everyone can see it." I swallowed hard, biting back the tears that threatened to spill. I had tried to explain that mom needed care, that she wasn't strong enough to do everything herself, and that I wasn't taking advantage, quite the opposite. I was giving up my time, my energy, and even parts of my own life to ensure she could live comfortably. But my words bounced off him like rain on stone. "Excuses. You're just lazy, that's all," he snapped, and I felt my chest tighten, my throat closing. For the first time, I realized that love and duty alone could not pierce the armor of someone determined to see you fail. The tension in the house grew over the following months. Every meal I prepared, every errand I ran for mom, every hour I spent helping her manage her health, was met with criticism or cold remarks. He would roll his eyes, mutter under his breath, or make pointed comments in front of neighbors, as if my care were some burden I had chosen selfishly. Family gatherings became battlegrounds, with mom caught in the middle, trying desperately to mediate to prevent fights, but unable to stop the words that cut me deeply. And yet, despite the hurt, I never wavered. I kept taking care of mom, waking early to cook breakfast, cleaning her room, accompanying her to doctor's appointments, and sitting by her side when she was anxious or lonely. Every smile she gave me, every soft word of thanks, was worth more than any recognition my brother could offer. Deep down, I knew that duty and love were more powerful than criticism, and that one day, the truth of my devotion would reveal itself in ways neither of us could yet imagine. The conflict reached its peak one winter afternoon, as I helped mom bundle up for a walk in the garden. My brother stormed into the room, frustration written across his face. "I don't know why mom even lets you get away with this. You're living in her house for free, and you think that makes you a good person. You're a freeloader, plain and simple." He slammed the door behind him, leaving mom and me in stunned silence. I knelt beside mom, holding her hand, trying to calm the anxiety her son's words had stirred. "Don't worry, mom," I whispered softly. "I'm here and I'll take care of you. No one's words can change that." At that moment, a mix of sadness and determination filled me. Sadness for the hurt his words caused, but determination to continue on my path with patience and integrity. I decided silently that I would not let his judgment define my actions. Years passed. I continued to care for mom, quietly managing her health, her comfort, and the home she had built with dad. I worked hard, sometimes taking on extra shifts, sometimes rearranging my life entirely to be there for her. My brother's resentment lingered, but I had learned to accept it without letting it poison my sense of purpose. And then, unexpectedly, the news came that changed everything. The lawyer called, arranging a meeting to discuss mom's estate. I walked into the office, heart pounding, unsure what to expect. Mom had always been modest, but I knew she had made arrangements for her property, her savings, and the family assets to be distributed thoughtfully. What I didn't anticipate was the truth. She had left the bulk of everything to me, her child who had stayed by her side, cared for her tirelessly, and put family above all else. My brother's face turned pale when the lawyer explained the details. I could see the shock, the disbelief, and perhaps, buried under it all, a flicker of guilt. He had mocked me, dismissed me, and judged me for years, yet here I was, inheriting what he had assumed would be his by right. It was a quiet, surreal moment, not of triumph over him, but of recognition that love, sacrifice, and patience had a reward beyond anger, insult, or resentment. And as I left the lawyer's office that day, documents in hand, I realized something important. Life has a way of balancing itself, often in quiet, unexpected ways. Those who belittle, those who judge, and those who underestimate us may never understand our choices, but that does not diminish the value of integrity, compassion, and devotion. The path of care and dedication may be lonely at times, but it carries a strength that outlasts cruelty and reveals its worth in time. That day, I walked home slowly, thinking of mom, of all the mornings and nights I had spent by her side, and of the man who had called me a freeloader. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt calm, content, and profoundly certain that I had done right, not for recognition, but for love, duty, and the quiet knowledge that doing good without expectation is its own reward. Life continued with its quiet rhythm, and I immersed myself fully in caring for mom, even as my brother's resentment simmered just beneath the surface. Every morning, I would wake before sunrise to prepare her breakfast, make sure her medications were organized, and check that the house was warm and comfortable. The tasks themselves were routine, almost meditative, but they carried an emotional weight that only I seemed to understand. My brother, meanwhile, had continued to criticize me at every opportunity, reminding Mom and anyone who would listen that I was living off her generosity, that I was a burden, and that my efforts were nothing but laziness disguised as care. Sometimes, I would hear him mutter these things under his breath when he thought I wasn't listening, and each word felt like a small knife twisting in my chest. Yet I refused to respond with anger. I had learned that reacting to his cruelty only gave it power, and my focus needed to remain on Mom, on her comfort, and on the quiet satisfaction of doing what I knew was right. Over time, my devotion began to show results. Mom's health, while never perfect, was stable, and she seemed happier, more at ease, and more vibrant than she had been in years. Her laughter became more frequent, her smiles brighter, and I felt a deep sense of fulfillment every time I saw her resting comfortably in her favorite chair or enjoying a walk in the garden. These moments reminded me that love and care, even when unrecognized by others, create a ripple effect of warmth and security that cannot be measured by judgment or words. My brother, however, refused to acknowledge this. He became increasingly irritable, and even small disagreements escalated quickly, often leaving Mom anxious and exhausted from trying to mediate between us. I learned to pick my battles carefully, to respond with calm words, and to maintain an inner balance that kept his anger from affecting me more than necessary. There were moments of deep loneliness during this period. Watching my peers enjoy vacations, career milestones, and social lives while I was tethered to responsibility was challenging. But I found solace in small pleasures, sharing stories with Mom, helping neighbors in need, and knowing that my actions carried a meaning and significance far beyond recognition from someone who refused to see it. And then, one evening, a crisis emerged that tested everything I had worked for. Mom fell ill suddenly, her condition alarming enough that we had to rush her to the hospital. My brother, instead of helping or offering support, stood at the door, arms crossed, shaking his head, muttering that I had made her dependent, and that all of this was somehow my fault. My heart ached not for his words, but for the fact that he could not see the love, care, and effort that had sustained her through the years. I focused entirely on Mom, coordinating with doctors, ensuring she received proper treatment, and staying by her side through long nights, sometimes holding her hand as she slept, whispering reassurances she barely heard but needed all the same. It was exhausting, emotionally and physically, but I knew that this was my duty, my choice, and my act of devotion. Slowly, her health improved, and the doctors praised the care she had received, mentioning how attentive and patient I was as her primary caregiver. The recognition from professionals, unlike the criticisms from my brother, carried weight. It validated that my sacrifices, though unseen by him, were meaningful and impactful. Still, my brother continued to express disbelief, insisting that my presence was unnecessary and that he could handle matters alone, despite having never spent time caring for her himself. It was frustrating, but I had learned to accept that he could not comprehend the quiet labor of love I carried each day. One evening, after another long day, I sat with Mom in the living room, her favorite blanket draped over her shoulders, and she took my hand gently. "You've done so much for me," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "I don't know how I would have managed without you." I felt a lump in my throat, the warmth of her gratitude washing over me and filling the emptiness left by my brother's rejection. It was a reminder that the bond we share, rooted in care and love, mattered more than any criticism from someone blinded by jealousy or resentment. As months turned into years, my responsibilities grew, but so did my sense of purpose. I learned to navigate the tension with my brother, sometimes walking away to preserve my peace, sometimes standing firm to protect Mom from his harsh words. I discovered that patience, consistency, and quiet perseverance were more powerful than arguments, and that actions, more than words, ultimately reveal truth. And then came the news that changed everything. My mother's lawyer called to discuss her will and estate, explaining that she had thoughtfully arranged her assets, leaving the majority to the child who had remained by her side, cared for her tirelessly, and put family above all else. I listened as the details were read aloud, my heart steady yet filled with disbelief. My brother's reaction, which I would learn later, was shock, confusion, and perhaps a dawning realization of the years he had spent misjudging me. I didn't feel triumph or malice. I felt a calm, quiet satisfaction, knowing that love, care, and integrity had been recognized, even if my brother had failed to see it for so long. That day, I understood something profound. Life rewards devotion and sincerity, even when others doubt or belittle it. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the patience, and the unwavering commitment to someone you love, all of it matters, and in ways that cannot be measured by judgment or resentment. And as I returned home that evening, Mom smiling softly, I felt a sense of peace that no amount of criticism could ever disturb. I had chosen the right path, even when it seemed lonely, and in the end, that choice brought validation far beyond words. A life lived with integrity, compassion, and devotion to those who matter most. After the meeting with the lawyer, the atmosphere in the house shifted, though not in the way my brother expected. He had been polite on the surface, but I could see the tension in his eyes, the way he avoided looking directly at me, and the subtle bitterness that lingered behind his words. He had spent years labeling me a freeloader, accusing me of taking advantage of Mom, and yet here was the undeniable truth. I had cared for her selflessly, and in return, Mom had left everything in my care. I didn't gloat or say a word, there was no need. The silence itself spoke volumes. He tried to argue, suggesting that Mom's decision was unfair, that she had been influenced by favoritism, and that I had somehow manipulated her into leaving me the estate. I listened calmly, feeling none of the anger he seemed to expect. Inside, I knew the truth. Nothing I had done to care for Mom was manipulative. It had been pure devotion, born from love, duty, and years of quiet sacrifice. The contrast between his anger and my calmness must have been jarring. For the first time, I saw a flicker of self-awareness cross his face. Perhaps he realized, finally, that his judgments had been wrong, and that the person he had criticized and belittled for years was the very one who had shown unwavering care when it mattered most. Yet, he could not fully acknowledge it. Instead, he lashed out in other ways, questioning the decisions Mom had made about property, trying to involve distant relatives, even suggesting that I should share everything to make it fair. But I remained resolute. I had learned that generosity must come from the heart, and fairness is not dictated by jealousy or entitlement. Mom's wishes were clear, and I would honor them exactly as she intended. Over the next few weeks, our interactions were tense. Every word my brother spoke seemed to carry a hidden accusation or a reminder of his old resentment. But I had grown stronger, more patient, and more confident in my own judgment. I refused to be dragged into arguments, to justify my devotion, or to explain the love I had shown. His frustration only highlighted the strength of my choices, the quiet power of consistency, and the value of caring for someone selflessly. One evening, as I was helping Mom sort through old photographs, my brother entered the room, glancing at the pictures with a strange mix of curiosity and unease. "I can't believe she left all this to you," he muttered quietly, almost to himself. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I looked at Mom, who smiled softly, her eyes reflecting gratitude and peace. "It's exactly what she wanted," I said gently. That was enough. The moments that followed were subtle but meaningful. My brother began to act with a touch more respect, though it was tentative, and his harsh words became less frequent. He saw me working tirelessly, not for recognition or reward, but because I truly cared. Slowly, he could no longer deny the depth of my commitment. It was not a sudden transformation. He did not apologize fully, and there were still moments of tension, but the dynamic had shifted. I had proven, without anger or confrontation, that love and dedication could not be dismissed or belittled. And through it all, Mom's health continued to improve, her days filled with comfort, security, and the knowledge that she was cared for with unwavering devotion. Watching her thrive, knowing that my efforts had created this stability and happiness, brought me a sense of fulfillment far greater than any confrontation or argument could. Over time, I also began to see subtle changes in my brother that went beyond the surface. He started asking for advice on managing household responsibilities, sometimes even acknowledging my guidance quietly. He still struggled with his old judgments, but there was a softening, a recognition that caring for someone requires more than criticism. It requires patience, empathy, and selflessness. And as I reflected on the years of conflict, the sleepless nights, and the moments of doubt, I realized that my journey had not been about proving him wrong or seeking validation. It had been about remaining true to my values, nurturing those I loved, and finding strength in consistency and integrity. Life has a way of testing patience, love, and resilience, and I had learned that enduring criticism with grace, acting with compassion, and holding firm to boundaries carries its own quiet victory. In the end, the inheritance, the legal acknowledgement, and even the grudging respect from my brother were secondary to the deeper lessons. That love is not transactional, that devotion cannot be measured by words of approval, and that the most meaningful rewards are often the unseen ones. The smiles of the person you care for, the quiet confidence that comes from doing what is right, and the inner peace that emerges when you live authentically, with integrity, and with compassion. That realization, more than any material inheritance, was the true triumph. And as I looked around the home I had maintained, the garden I had tended, and the mother I had cared for with unwavering love, I felt a profound sense of calm. The battles of the past had shaped me, strengthened me, and prepared me for this moment of quiet vindication, not through confrontation, but through action, patience, and love that could not be denied. The weeks following the legal confirmation of Mom's will brought a new kind of tension in the house, but also a sense of closure I had been waiting for. My brother, who had long called me a freeloader, could no longer deny the reality. I had been the one caring for Mom day and night, attending to her needs, and ensuring her comfort in ways he had neither attempted nor understood. At first, he tried to argue, suggesting that I had manipulated Mom, that I had unfairly positioned myself as her primary caregiver. I listened quietly, feeling none of the old anger or resentment, only a calm determination to let actions, rather than words, speak for themselves. Mom, ever wise, would smile at me softly, her eyes conveying the gratitude and pride she could not fully put into words. "You did what no one else could," she said one evening, as I helped her arrange her medications and favorite books on the living room table. Her words warmed my heart, more than any inheritance or legal document ever could. Over time, my brother's bitterness began to soften, not completely, but enough for him to recognize the truth he had ignored for so many years, that I had given my time, energy, and love selflessly, without expectation, and that my actions had created a life of care, stability, and peace for our mother. There were quiet moments when he would observe me tending to her, helping with meals, or simply sitting by her side while she read, and I could sense a dawning realization in his eyes, a recognition that perhaps he had misjudged me all along. One evening he approached me hesitantly, his voice soft, almost uncertain. I didn't realize how much you've done," he admitted, the words awkward but sincere. I nodded, offering a gentle smile, feeling no need for confrontation or apologies. It wasn't about him. It was about honoring my choices, my values, and the life I had built with Mom. As time passed, our interactions became calmer. He still had moments of resentment, but the dynamic had shifted. Where there had once been hostility and judgment, there was now a cautious acknowledgement of my devotion, even if unspoken. I continued to care for Mom with the same patience and love as before, and the house settled into a rhythm of quiet harmony. What I realized through this journey was profound. True strength is not about proving others wrong through confrontation or anger. It is about staying steadfast in one's values, performing acts of love and care without expectation, and maintaining boundaries that protect one's emotional well-being. I had endured years of ridicule, endured the label of freeloader, and yet I emerged not bitter, but resilient, compassionate, and deeply fulfilled. The inheritance, while significant, was never the reward I had sought. The real reward was the confirmation that love, patience, and selfless devotion hold a power far greater than words of criticism or envy. They create lasting impact, foster genuine respect, and provide a deep, enduring sense of purpose. One afternoon, as Mom and I sat together in the garden, sunlight streaming through the trees, I reflected on the journey, the sacrifices, the lonely nights, the quiet moments of doubt, and the unwavering commitment that had guided my choices. I realized that life often tests us in ways that are unseen, that love is rarely recognized immediately, and that the strength to persevere comes from believing in one's own heart and actions, not the approval of others. My brother, sitting quietly on the porch steps, observed us without interrupting, and I sensed that the lessons he had resisted were slowly settling in. He had witnessed, whether he admitted it or not, the depth of my devotion and the integrity of my actions. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. Not from vindication, not from inheritance, but from the knowledge that I had acted with love, honor, and compassion, and that my life reflected the values I held dear. Years of criticism could not erase the quiet triumph of a life well lived, a mother well cared for, and a heart guided by patience, dignity, and devotion. I understood that family is complicated, that love can coexist with boundaries, and that true respect is earned through consistent, selfless action. My brother's disbelief, anger, and eventual acknowledgement were secondary to the quiet joy and fulfillment I experienced daily in caring for Mom, living authentically, and standing firm in my choices. And so, as I watched Mom smile softly, resting her head against my shoulder, I realized the greatest inheritance of all had been there all along. The knowledge that I had acted with integrity, that I had given love freely, and that the quiet strength of devotion could overcome judgment, resentment, and doubt. That understanding, more than any wealth or acknowledgement, became my life's most profound lesson. It reminded me that the choices we make in the quiet moments, when no one is watching and no one praises us, define our character far more than the opinions of those who fail to see our worth. And in that quiet, reflective moment, surrounded by love, patience, and the life I had chosen, I felt an unshakable peace, knowing that I had done right, cared deeply, and lived fully, no matter what anyone else had said.